So namaste and welcome back to this lecture series by Dr. Kanniks Kannikeswaran. And it's titled India's Tirtha-kshetra, Muthuswami Dīkṣitar and the Geocultural Imagination of India. And this is the third and final part of this lecture series, and we're so glad to be joined by Dr. Kanniks today. He's going to continue where he left off yesterday. And before that, we'll just begin with a small prayer. We'll chant the 32 names of Durga and then begin right away. Okay. Durga, Durgarthi Samani, Durga Padmini Varini, Durga Machedini, Durga Sadhini, Durga Nasini, Durga Todharini, Durga Nihantri, Durga Mapaha, Durga Majnanada, Durga Daityaloka Davanala, Durgama, Durgama Loka, Durgamatma Swarupini, Durgamarga Prada, Durgama Vidya, Durgamashrita, Durgamajnana Samsthana, Durgamadhyana Bhashini, Durgamoha, Durgamaga, Durgamartha Swarupini, Durgamasura Samhantri, Durgamayudhadharini, Durgamangi, Durgamata, Durgamya, Durgameshwari, Durga Bhima, Durga Bhama, Durgabha, Durgadharini. So yes, Dr. Kanniks, you can take over from here. If you'd like to share presentation, I'll just let you know if we can see it, or if you're going to start just speaking, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just go start speaking first.
Sure, yeah.
First of all, namaste to one and all. This is the third of the lecture series, and welcome back everyone who's been through the first two, and also welcome the new listeners who are coming today. First of all, from those of you that have seen the last two ones, any quick thoughts before we jump on to the third one? You can type in or...
You should be able to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, if there are no thoughts, let me just go on. I want to continue where I left, but I want to give a little bit of a review of where we are. In the first lecture, we talked about the uniqueness of Dīkṣitar's music and how different it is from that of the others and what his unique contribution is. And then we set out to look at the life history of Dīkṣitar from the perspective of the Tirtha Yatra tradition in India, or just looking at India as a vast sacred space that is lined with sites, sacred sites that have been revered for millennia. Given that, let's very quickly go through the slides of the last session, and then continue from where we left. Where we left was in Thiruvarur, the birthplace of Dīkṣitar, where he had returned to in his midlife. Okay, so we started out saying that India is a vast sacred space. We watched a video on the sacred sites of India. We looked at the 12 Jyotirlingas, the Shakti Peetams all over India, the Aru Padai Veedu temples of Tamil Nadu, the Panchabhuta Sthalas. And we looked at the tradition of pilgrimage and historical personalities that have actually traveled all the way from India. What's one thing common to all five of these personalities? Anyone? Quickly.
Philosophers.
Okay. Anything else? See, the last one is Mahakavi Subramanya Bharatiya. The first one is Adi Shankar.
And singer Mahakavi Subramanya is philosopher.
Subramania Bharatiya. But what's one thing common to all of them? This is Bhaskaracharya. Okay, let me give the game away. Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu.
Oh,
He was from the south, who traveled all over India. Okay, and we talked about the Shaiva pilgrimage circuit. Yeah. Then we talked about the Vaishnava pilgrimage circuit with Srirangam as the holiest of the spaces. We talked about the uniqueness of Dīkṣitar's music, the creations of Dīkṣitar in Sanskrit, in a stunning range of melodies, represent an unspoken story, the story of India's temple heritage, a complex tapestry of pan-Indian ideas interwoven with local traditions, puzzling palindromes and archaic prosodical constructs, as well as deep Hindu philosophy. We talked about Dīkṣitar as a personality who he could be represented by each one of these. So it is my opinion that he would have been a cool person to hang out with. He was well-traveled, well-educated. He could speak eloquently about any of these topics: yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, Advaita Vedanta, and he actually did. He combined all this, integrated all this, and created music that he actually spoke about these ideas. He was a wholesome educator. He shared his wisdom freely to a wide range of disciples. He was fearless, passionate, and he had a pan-Indian vision above everything else. We looked at his life from starting out with 6 geographical hubs. His birthplace, Thiruvarur, the first place the family moved to. It's not Manali in Himachal. It's Manali near Chennai. Then Kashi, Banaras, Kanchi in South India, Tanjavur, and after Kanchi it was back to Thiruvarur and then to Tanjavur and then to Ettayapuram in the deep south where he passed on. We talked about his nephew Subramaniya Dīkṣitar. And then we talked about his father Ramaswamy Dīkṣitar, who migrated during war times to the Tanjavur area. We talked about the overwhelming presence of the Sri Vidya tradition with Bhaskara Raya at as the fountainhead of the tradition in southern India. We talked about Ramaswamy Dīkṣitar's move to Thiruvarur and the tapas in Vaidishwaran Koil, after which Muthuswamy Dīkṣitar was born, and the childhood of Dīkṣitar in Thiruvarur, and the disturbed political scenario during that time, and the move of the family to Manali or near Tiruvattur near Chennai, Fort St. George, and as to how the family would go take a look at the bands accompanying the marching armies of the East India Company and how that would influence Dīkṣitar's music later on. Dīkṣitar's move to Kashi in the company of Chidambaranatha Yogi and Chakralingeshwara shrine, which is there today, which is believed to be the final resting place of Chidambaranatha Yogi, the guru of Muthuswamy Dīkṣitar. Or at least this is a lingam that was worshipped by Muthuswamy Dīkṣitar and by Bhaskara Raya. We talked about Dīkṣitar's emergence as a Vagyakara in Tirthani, thanks to the grace of Skanda, in a manner similar to Arunagirinathar. Then we demonstrated the composition Srinatadi Gurgu Ho Jayati. We talked about the long phase of life in Kanchipuram, which literally shaped the Dīkṣitar style of music. This is the Ekamareshwara temple, the Soma Skanda, the Kamakshi Amman temple, and then Dīkṣitar's desire to travel back to Thiruvarur, visiting places like Sholingar, Tirupati, and Chidambaram on the way. We looked at the composition Ananda Natana Prakasam and finally landed in Thiruvarur. So let's take over from here again. So this is Thiruvarur. Thiruvarur is what we would call in Tamil an Amuda Surabhi. Amuda Surabhi, actually, it's like Surabhi is a Sanskrit word. Amrit is also a Sanskrit word. This is a never-ending source of nectar, of joy, and knowledge. There's so much to learn from that place, even on a daily basis. It's a huge temple, and like I mentioned before, That's probably the only place where you have a coffee store that's named after a deep yogic or even Advaitic principle of the Ajapa Natanam, the dance of bliss without a japam, as opposed to the bucks and the stars. And Tiruvarur is an architectural delight, the way the whole camp laid out, and also an artist delight in terms of everything. Look at all the images on the GoPro. Layers and layers of stories actually depicted on the GoPro. It would take months to actually enjoy all this. And just imagine how the whole thing was laid out. This is the tank of the temple that's like 25 acres, as opposed to the temple, which is about 20 acres or even more. I don't know. I don't know the exact area, but then this is the interior of the temple with its numerous temples, sub-temples inside. So you can't refer to Tiruvarur as just a temple, Tyagaraja temple. It's a temple complex, at the center of which, the center of attention here is Tyagaraja. And Tyagaraja is the king of renouncers, Shiva, in the form of Soma Skanda. Shiva in the center, Uma in the side, and Skanda in the middle. So Sa Oma Sa Skanda, that is Soma Skanda. There's actually a composition of Tyagaraja which explains this very clearly. Tyagaraja Palayashu Mam Nityananda Kanda Somaskanda Vidhi Vitankatyagara Aja Tyagaraja Palaya Ashu Mam. Always protect me right away. And who are you? Nityananda Kanda. It's a root of that joy of existence, Nityanandam, which is nothing other than the Parabrahman, the concept of the Parabrahma described in Advaita. There's nothing other than eternal joy, Satchidananda, Nityananda, root of Nityananda, Soma Skanda. So that's this form. And then Vidhi Vitanka, that's one of the older names of Shiva Tyagaraja or even Vanvikanatha, enshrined in Tiruvarur in the words Vidhi Vitankar. It's the name with which he is described even in the Tevaram hymns that were written more than 1,000 years before Dīkṣitar. And you see Sundaramurti Nayanar here along with his wife, consort Paravai Nachiyar, and these are actually enshrined in this temple as some of the prime devotees of Shiva Tyagaraja. So if you go to the temple, you should take time to read through these things which actually describe the nature of the Ajappa breathing and the positioning of the entire temple as an illustration of Raja Yoga itself. So you can see that the way the temple is structured, it's supposed to be an embodiment of Raja Yoga and even the dance of Shiva, which you can see on YouTube left and right, where Tyagaraja comes out only twice a year, and when he does, he's taken out in dance in the Ajappa to resemble the Ajappa dance. What is Ajappa? Japa is mantra japa that you do with a mantra, with a bijakshara mantra or any mantra that you're given a mantropadesham. If you do, when you can do that loudly or you can do it silently or just with lip movement. The fourth way you do it is that the mantra itself chants itself. You don't even have to make any effort. It's through breathing actually. So you inhale and then you exhale. The inhalation, the exhalation correspond to the words Saha Aham and Aham Saha. I am that reality and that reality is me. So that becomes Soham. If you combine Aham and Saha and Aham, it becomes Hamsa. So it's called Hamsa Natanam. It's also called Ajapa Natanam. And what it is read through this, you'll see 21,600 breaths in a day. And the Ajapa Natanam is when the deity goes forward and backward, running, moving to the left, leaning to the left and leaning to the right, and going up and coming down and jumping and dancing. I mean, it's it's quite a sight to behold. And to me, the thing that moves me is that, see, this has been going on and on and on for generations together, for centuries together. Why are they doing it? It's to keep enunciating the principle of existence. It's like a bodhana. It's like a lesson for everybody that watches to experience and actually realize our place in the grand scheme of existence. So the entire infrastructure is in place so that this principle of existence gets known to us. It's enforced. That knowledge is enforced on us just by enabling us to look at it. I mean, what a bhagya is it? And it's like you get it like 2 times a year. Once during the Panguni Uttram, the Falgun month on the asterism of Uttara, or actually during the Asalesha Nakshatram, and Tyagaraja goes on in a procession in the huge chariot, and again in December during the Margari Tiruvadirai when the same dance happens. And there are 6 other temples where the same dance happens. And there's 3 temples near Chennai where a similar dance happens. So, and one of them is Tiruvanmiyur, the other is Tiruvattriyur. The third place is called Tirukachur, where the same dance happens. Well, actually, a similar dance happens. So, again, it's a gift from Dīkṣitar that these concepts have actually been, he's actually ingested these concepts into his compositions, and he has given them to us. And going back to Tyagaraja, so the composition that I just sang now, it's in a raga called Gaula. It's a short composition. It's taught to beginners, and then there are major compositions like Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, then Vaibhavam, Bhavam, Vam. And we'll get into that Alankara later, but that's a very powerful composition that we even listened to in the first class. Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam. He describes Tyagaraja as Sadashiva, none other than Sadashiva. Sadashiva is the ultimate guru. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. So, and then he goes on to describe the Lakshana of Tyagaraja. Nagaraja Vidita Padam, Nada Vindu Kalas Padam. And Yoga Ruda Nam Rupa Visvashrish. Oh, it goes on. Like then Shiva Shaktyadi Tattva Swarupa, Shiva Shaktyadi Sakala Tattva Swarupa Prakasham, and all that. So it's not just music. It's the principle behind Tyagaraja, the principle behind Raja Yoga, the principle behind the construction of the temple, and the principle behind our existence itself, which is all succinctly summarized into that composition and delivered in the same manner that it is delivered in 8 of the Tyagaraja Vibhakti Kritis. Now, there's another one which is called Tyagaraja Maha Dvajaroha. So, Dvaja is the flag staff in front of temples that you must have seen. And a flag is hoisted every time a Brahmotsavam happens. The Brahmotsavam is the longest festival that happens in a temple calendar. So, so there are the deities taken out on various vahanas and on rathas and all that, and that is what is described in this composition. So it's a tough call, and you know how the way Dīkṣitar does it is really beautiful. The way he collapses ideas into succinct phrases, which are nothing other than sutras. So Dīkṣitar has a way of creating sutras and packaging them into compositions and tying all the sutras together with one verb in most cases. And that's the structure of his compositions, as we will see again. And then this is Sannidhi for Nilod Palamba, on whom there are a lot of compositions, plus there's lots of compositions on Ganapati. I think there's 11 compositions on different forms of Ganapati enshrined in Tiruvarur, like Vatapi, like Panchamatanga Mukha Ganapati, then Hasti Vadanaya, and then there is Uchishta Ganapata. Sorry. So, and then there's a song on Durga. There's songs on Dakshinamurti and Dandayudapani, who's in a temple outside of this temple, Tiruvarur itself. There's a composition on Achaleshwara, and that's a big story altogether. All that is explored in the book. So I want to bring to you to focus the fact that the book is getting released it's already listed online, and we will send you a link to that. The book explains many of these ideas in great detail. The book is titled Anubhuti, a personal experience of Dīkṣitar, and experiencing Muthuswami Dīkṣitar. Now, this is the deity Kamalamba, who is enshrined in Tiruvarur, and this is a Shakti Peetam, and this is one of the foremost centers of Shakti worship in the form of the Sri Chakra Mahameru. In the Tantric tradition, we have a deity, we have a yantra, and we have a mantra that goes with it. And essentially, all three are the same. So the figure that you see here is a two-dimensional projection of the Sri Chakra Mahameru, which is a pyramid. And as you can see, there are multiple layers in it. The outermost layer, each of the layers has a name. The outermost layer is Trailokya Mohana Chakra. The next one is the Sarva Asha Paripuraka Chakra. And if you go layer after layer, this layer has 16 petals. And then you have layers which have 14 triangles. And as you go deeper and deeper, you go to the innermost Trikona Chakra, and in that is a dot. The dot is a bindu. That's called the Sarva Anandamaya Chakra. And so Dīkṣitar has a set of 9 compositions describing Devi as worshipped in each of these chakras. Plus, he starts out with an invocatory kriti in the Raga Todi and concludes the whole series with a Mangala kriti in Sri Ragam. So it's a composite package, and it's a phenomenal gift to humankind, because the Navavarana Puja is done only initiated the tradition. But seeing Navavarana Kritis is open to all if you them from a constructor, and it gives you literally the same experience as doing the puja itself. And here's Swami Malai. So when Dīkṣitar was in Tiruvarur, he used that time to travel around, and he was never at rest. He was always going around. And just imagine travel in those days when he was an orthodox practitioner of the Sri Vidya tradition. So he probably had to follow his practices even while he traveled. But again, look at how India was structured, that has been structured traditionally. You walk from one village to another, there would be a temple there would be a temple tank, and temples would give you offerings, and people would take care of you. That's the only manner in which he could have traveled, because you cannot imagine, like for us, like I said yesterday, travel today, especially for NRIs, is that you rent a car, a sumo, or whatever it is, and then travel in comfort, carrying your packaged meals and ice water and chill water and everything with you. Go from temple to temple, pack 6, 8 temples into one day, take your pictures and post your selfies and all that. But it was very different during Dīkṣitar's time. And so here's a composition he created on a Murugan enshrined in Swami Malai. So let me just play this for you.
भरण भूमि जलाग्निवायु गगन किरण बोध रूप नित्यानंद करण कामी वितरण निपुण चरण काय नाटकालंकार भरण भूमि जला अग्निवायु गगन किरण बोध रूप नित्यानंद करण स्वामीनाथ परिपालयाशु मां स्वप्रकाश वल्लीश गुरुगुहदेव सेनेश स्वामीनाथ परिपालयाशु मां.
So there are some questions about this composition. I'll answer these at the end. Now, while Dīkṣitar was in Thiruvarur, one other thing happened, which is here is a disciple by name Thambiyappan, Shuddha Mandalam Thambiyappan. So there was a retinue of musicians in Thiruvarur, and there was this person called Thambiyappan who used to play this instrument called Shuddha Mandalam, along with a few other instruments, the Panchamukhavadiyam and so on. So he was suffering from an incurable stomach ailment, and Dīkṣitar looked at his horoscope and figured out that some parihara was required. And so he created a composition on Brihaspati, Brihaspate Tarapate, and taught it to him. And this was composed in the 7-beat Trishra Triputa Talam. And then he also composed a set of other 6 compositions on the Navagrahas. Surya Murte in Dhruva Talam, Chandram Bhajamanasa in Matya Talam, Angarakam Ashrayami in Rupaka Talam, then Budham Ashrayamyaham in Jhampa Talam, then of course Brihaspati, then Sri Shukra Bhagavantam in Atta Talam, and finally Divakara Tanujam in Ekatalam. So all these correspond to the 7 talas of the Alankara that we learn as students, right? Carnatic music. And there are 2 more positions, Rahu and Ketu, Smamyaham Sadarahum, and the composition of Ketu. So a total of 9 compositions representing the Navagrahas. Now there's a tour of Navagraha temples that's organized. It's actually pretty popular. It starts with a place called the Suryanar temple, and then goes on to a place called Tingalur, and then a place called Vaidishwaran Koil where Angaraka is enshrined. Then Thiruvenkadu where Budhan is enshrined. Then a place called Alangudi where Brihaspati, actually Dakshinamurti is the prime deity there. Then Kanjanur where it's considered to be the Shukra Sthalam, where Shukra is considered to have worshipped Shiva. Actually, there's a place called Vellīswarar Koil in Chennai, which is also a Shukra Sthalam. Then you have Tirunallar, which is considered to be the Shanaishchara shrine, and then Tirunageshwaram for Rahu, and Perumballam for Ketu. So that's a completely different topic altogether, and I'm happy to present a lecture demonstration on the Navagraha Kritis of Dīkṣitar and the Navagraha temples of Tamil Nadu, and the connections that exist and don't exist. That's a long story. But these are brilliant compositions. So they don't just encapsulate the stories of the Navagrahas, but they also illustrate something. Okay, so there's a little podi there. There's a little thing. Okay, 7 kritis, 1 for each day of the week. Oh, that 7 also corresponds to the 7 talas, the Suladi Sapta talas. So those are all integrated together. And like I said, during a stay in Thiruvarur, this is a composition. This represents the story of the Kanakadhara Stotram during the time of Adi Shankara, and the Kriti by Dīkṣitar, Hiranmayim Lakshmim Sada Bhajami. It uses some phrases from the Veda mantras like Hiranyavarnam and all that, Harinim, Charana Kisalayam and all that. The raga is Lalita. It also invokes Kamalamba in this composition. And it's supposed to represent a miracle where there are all kinds of stories associated with Dīkṣitar and the alleviation of material desires and so on. We'll come to that in just a bit. But this is an important slide. What this is images of different temples in and around Tiruvarur that Dīkṣitar traveled to. Like I said, traveled on foot or on bullock cart or however he traveled. So there are places like Nagapattinam, a place called Keevalur. Here is Nagapattinam Soundararaja Perumal Temple. Then you have Thiruvenkadu, then Indalur near Mayiladuthurai, Kannamanggai, Tiruvarur, Kadavur. Of course, Kumbakonam and Mayiladuthurai, but the Vallalar Koil in Mayiladuthurai. Of course, he already went to Vaidishwaran Koil, maybe he traveled again. We don't know the exact sequence of events there. And Thiruvidai, Marudur, Swami Malai, Kumbakonam, and I mentioned Kumbakonam already. So the reason I'm showing all this is just look at the temple wealth of Tamil Nadu. So all these temples had their origins in ancient times, in the first millennium. They were maintained, they were embellished. Additional structures were added, amenities were provided, temple tanks provide irrigation systems for entire villages because they maintain the water table in villages. They serve as a catchment for all the excess monsoon water that flows and then stabilize underground water levels. And they were convenient for pilgrims to make use of when they traveled and visited various temples. So this extensive pilgrimage trail, Dīkṣitar touched upon it. Not only did he just visit them, he also created compositions which explain the Sthala Puranas along with a lot of other details, again from an Advaitic pan-Indian perspective. So one of these temples was, this is Kashi. We know that Dīkṣitar spent 5 years of his life in Kashi, but at that time, remember, he was not a Bhāgyayakara yet. He was a sadhaka. He was indulging in, he was engaged in tapas during that time. It was only after he came back to the south and went to Tirthani that he became a Bhāgyayakara. But there are compositions of Dīkṣitar that refer back to Kashi. Ehi Annapurne is one example. Another one is he was invited to this place called Kolikkare, Garthathiram, which is near Tiruvarur. And there he composes brilliant composition. He created a bunch of compositions there, but the longest of them is the Chaturdasha Ragamalika. So Chaturdasha it's the number 14 in Sanskrit. So it's a Ragamalika in 14 ragas. And again, look at the way in which it's been thought out and created. The Pallavi has 2 ragas, the Anupallavi has 4, and the Charanam has 8. So 2 and 4 and 8. So it's a geometric progression. So if there was one more charanam, that would have had what? 16 ragas probably. That would have been a 30 raga malika. So, but anyway, he stopped at 14. He calls it out as Chaturdasha Bhuvana Rupa Raga Malika Bharana. Sri Vishwanatham Bhajeham. Again, Vishwanatha refers to the deity enshrined in Kolikkare as well as the deity enshrined in Kashi. Again, make note of this. Vishwanatha is the Lord of the universe. And there's shrines, there's Kasi Vishwanatha is what we refer to him as in Tamil. So in Tamil it becomes Kasi. Kasi Vishwanatha is enshrined in many temples. You just circumambulate a Shiva temple, you will find Vishwanatha and Visalakshi in the form of a lingam and the Nambal in the Prakara section. So there is this direct reference to Kashi in all pilgrimage sites in southern India, and especially in places which had temples exclusively dedicated to Kashi Vishwanatha. So this is a powerful composition, and every section ends with a series of swaras and sahityas which go back in reverse order. Like at the end of the Anupallavi, it's the last raga in the Anupallavi, that is the 6th raga in the composition, is Mohanam. పంచీకృత పంచమహ భూత ప్రపంచాది మోహనకరలింగం విరించి విష్ణు రుద్రమూర్తిమయం. Next ragam is Vishaya Panchakarhitamabhayam. Gaula Niratishaya Sukhada Nipunataram Nima Sarami Paramamam. Gauri. Parataram Paramashivathulam Sarasa Sadaya Hridaya Nilayamanisham Sri Vishwanatham Vareham. And you need a whole lecture demonstration to talk through this. The next phase of Dīkṣitar's life was, see, by this time, both his brothers decided to leave Tiruvarur because they had invitations from other patrons to support their music down south, like in Madurai and other places. So they left for Trichy and Madurai. And Dīkṣitar continued his travels, and then he was invited by the people in Tanjavur to go and stay there. And this marks an important phase in his life because it was during this time that the four highly venerated, highly respected Natyacharyas, dance exponents, dance gurus, Chinnaya, Ponnaya, Shivanandam, and Vadivelu. We refer to them as the Tanjavur Dance Quartet. They were young boys during this time, and they learned music from Dīkṣitar, and they attained a level of proficiency. And Dīkṣitar even has said in one of his, it's recorded in some traditions that Dīkṣitar has actually said that they are to the art of Bharatanatyam what Purandaradasa is to the art of music. So they are the Margadarshis actually, and they created the Margam which is followed in Bharatanatyam, and they were students of Dīkṣitar. Not only that, one of them was a composer, Tanjavur Ponnaya Pillai, and he followed the grammar of Dīkṣitar's compositions. The Pallavi Anupallavi structure with the Madhyama Kala Sahityas, with the Raga Mudra, name of the Raga embedded in it, and with his Mudra, Guru Guhadasa, and imbibed in it. So it's like Maya Tita Swarupini Nannu Brovave Amba Maya Atita Swarupini. So this is by Ponnaya. This is not a Dīkṣitar composition. It was also during Dīkṣitar's stay in Tanjavur that he created he decided to document the entire series of the Raganga Ragas and their Upanga and Bhashanga, not all Upanga and Bhashangas, many of the Ragas, using the medium of his compositions. So there are many short kritis that were composed in and around Tanjavur in praise of deities in and around Tanjavur, illustrating the Raganga Raga system of Venkatamaki. And some prominent examples include Pamara Janapalini in the Raga Sumadyuti, which we refer to as Simendra Madhyamam in the other way of naming ragas. And then we have Panchabhuta Kiranavali in the Raga Kiranavali, and Harivati Haimavati in the Raga Haimavati, or actually it's called Desi Simarava. And then Bhoga Chaya Nataka Priye in the Raga Bhoga Chaya Nata. And he concludes the series with the Raga Rasamanjari, Shringara Rasamanjari, which is Raganga number 72. Again, a beautiful composition, where he describes Devi as Dvi Saptati Raganga Ragamodini, one who delights in the 72 Ragangas. So he makes it very clear that he has documented 72 Ragangas of Venkatamaki. And then you say that one of his brothers, Chinni, has passed on. And brother had gone traveling further south. So Dīkṣitar decided that he needed to offer comfort to the surviving brother. So he decides to travel down south. And the process of traveling, he didn't skip any places while he traveled down south. And if you follow the railway routes of today, from Tanjavur, where do you go? You go to Trichy. And in Trichy, what do you visit? You definitely visit Srirangam. In fact, Srirangam is so important that even the airport today is designed with the Gopuram of this Srirangam as or Srirangam temple as its facade. Okay. Now, this is probably the largest temple in India, and it enshrines Ranganatha, whose story goes back to the time of the Ramayana. I'm going to skip this, but there's two compositions here. One is not documented in the SSP, but it's probably more popular than anything else. It's Rangapura Vihara. I've heard, growing up, I used to hear my chittis sing this. And then I heard the MS Subbalakshmi version of it. And this is by far one of the most popular compositions of Dīkṣitar, but it's not documented in the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini. But there's another composition, Ranganayakam Bhavaye, in the Ragam Nayaki. And that's beautiful. That's probably one of the best compositions of Dīkṣitar, where the details of Srirangam begin to unfold layer by layer. So you feel like you're actually in the temple experiencing the Ranganatha himself. We'll have another lecture demonstration just for this composition. And then he visited other places in Trichy, like the Matrubhuteshwara temple, and then went to Madurai. Madurai is home to the Meenakshi temple, and he created Meenakshi Me Mudam Dehi, along with a few other kritis, and then also the Notiswara Sahityam, which goes Vande Meenakshi Twam Sarasi Javaktre Aparne Durge Natasura Sura Brinde. So Vande Meenakshi Twam Sarasi Javaktre Aparne Durge Natasura Brinde Shakti Guruguha Palini Jalaruho Charane. It's based on an Irish tune called the Rakes of Mallow. It's a tune that's normally sung in pubs, but this is a tune that Dīkṣitar must have heard during his stay in Chennai, and he just wrote Sanskrit words on it in praise of Madurai Meenakshi, and there you have. It's a very popular Notiswara Sahitya, and again, there's the story behind it, the way the song sounds in the West and all that has been documented in the film Colonial Interlude, which I made. We released in the year 2023. We hope to show it in a few more places before we put it online, hopefully within the next few months. I'm rushing through all this. And then from Madurai, he gets news that his brother was last seen at Rameswaram. So he decides to head in that direction, and he stops in a place called Sattur, where there's a temple dedicated to Venkata Chalapati. And there he sees a group of pilgrims saying that they were headed to a place called Ettayapuram to attend the wedding of somebody called Balaswami Dīkṣitar. So Dīkṣitar is very thrilled. He realizes that it's his brother who is in Ettayapuram, and that his wedding is going to be celebrated in the next couple of days or something like that. So he decides to join this group of people, and it's in Sattur that it is said that he composed a kriti called Venkateswara Yettappa Bhupatim Ashrayeham, because he also heard that that his brother's wedding was going to be celebrated by none other than the ruler of Ettayapuram, Ettappa Maharaja. So he sings this in praise of Venkateswara, but he also uses the name of the king in this composition, literally collapsing the two identities. Venkateswara Yettappa Bhupati Mashrayeham. There's another version of the song which goes Venkateswara Yadava Bhupati Mashrayeham. And then comes an important story in Dīkṣitar's life. So this is a sign that welcomes you to Ettayapuram today. This is a dry belt which doesn't get much rain at all, and during that, actually it was going through a drought. The land was, it was a really bad drought, and Dīkṣitar was traveling on a cart on his way to Ettayapuram, and he saw this and he was moved by the plight of the land, and he created a composition in a raga called Amrita Varshini, which had not been explored before at all. And this composition is in praise of Devi, Ananda Amrita Akarshini, Amrita Varshini, the name of the raga, the one who is capable of causing a rain of nectar. Yeah, Amrita Varshini is an important concept. It's not just the rain, it's If you read the Lalita Sahasranama, you will come across this phrase, Sudha Sarabhivarshini. So Devi is, Sudha is Amritam. Varshini, one who rains the celestial nectar, pretty much in the Sahasrara Chakra. Once you reach that state of awakened Kundalini, where your consciousness is awakened, and you experience the flow of that energy in your Sahasrara Chakra, the imagined 1,000-petal chakra above the skull, you really experience this joy of living, which is what is symbolized by the Amritam itself. So, but in the Laukika sense, when he sings this composition, the elements are moved. According to his biographer Subbarama Dīkṣitar, the sky was clear, but then from nowhere appeared a black cloud, and then more, and then more. And then torrential rains. It rained to such an extent that the cart got stuck in the mud. And some of his co-passengers actually had to push it, actually pull it out of the mud and wheel it all the way into Ettayapuram, where he met his brother, met the king. There was a lot of rejoicing. The wedding was celebrated, and so on and so forth. So this story has been illustrated the illustration is done by none other than S. Rajam, one of the greatest artists of our time. So this is a story of Dīkṣitar on a cart. Look at the imagination. He's sitting on the cart. His manuscript is right next to him. He's singing. He's in joy. He's in a trance, literally. And that brings down the rain. The surroundings are black, dark in color. So that's the story of Dīkṣitar and the rain. And we'll revisit this story this time. But again, the mysticism behind Dīkṣitar's work is another topic for a huge lecture demonstration right away. This is the Ettayapuram Palace as it's seen today. The wedding of Dīkṣitar's brother was celebrated here, and Dīkṣitar lived with his brother's family in the court of Ettayapuram for a little while. Then he went back to Tiruvarur and then lived there for some time. Then he got an invitation from the king to come back, and then he left once and for all, back from Tiruvarur, back to Ettayapuram, where he lived there till he breathed his last. And this is the Samadhi of Dīkṣitar. So he was not buried, basically. The story goes that he attained Mukti on Chaturdashi in the month of Tula, which actually corresponds to our Deepavali in the southern tradition. There are a lot of stories that he had a premonition that he was going to go, and then he felt the call of Annapurni, as his guru had told him. Chidambaranatha Yogi had told him. And Annapurni from Kashi, as the Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartha, the one who gives you Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartham. So in the Annapurnashtakam, when we pray to Annapurni, Bhiksham Dehi, Parvati, then Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartham. So that is what Adi Shankara is asking for, and that is what Devi gives you. The idea of being in eternal awareness about who you are with a sense of dispassion. And then a series of events happens. The story goes that his disciples were singing Meenakshi Me Mudam Dehi, Meena Lochani Pasha Mochani. This is what the story goes. It's not documented by his nephew, but this is the oral tradition. So it was listening to that Dīkṣitar left his mortal body, and then he was cremated. And in this site is the memorial that is built in his honor. Then his brother was the Asthana musician of the Ettayapuram court. Then his brother Balaswami Dīkṣitar, later on in life, he adopted his own grandson, his daughter's son, gave him the name Subbarama Dīkṣitar, and adopted him as his own son. Subbarama Dīkṣitar learned the compositions of Dīkṣitar from his father and from the other musicians that lived there, who must have had acquaintance with Dīkṣitar. And then, based on what he remembered, the evolution, the writing of the Subbarama of the Sangita Sampradaya Pradarshini, that's another long story. He documented all of his family's heirloom in the form of a large book called the Sangita Sampradaya Pradarshini. It was written originally in Telugu. It was rewritten in Tamil in the 1960s in the Music Academy, and then again published again by the Music Academy in English After a web version was published by others. This was in 2010 or 11. So the bottom line is we now have Dīkṣitar's legacy in English with us, like I showed you. I showed you the book in the first session itself. Then now like I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, this book is already available for ordering. It should be available physically in the next few weeks in your hands. It's titled Anubhuti. It's a story of Dīkṣitar, the story of his music, an explanation of his music, the inspiration behind his music, how the synthesis of ideas happened, and what can we take away from it for the 21st century. It's a pretty long book. It's about 400 pages long, and I'll get a chance to this and send me something when you. So it's been 150 years since his birth, and the story needs to be told. And like I said before, Ettayapuram is where his descendant Subbarama Dīkṣitar lived, and he taught music to his son Ambi Dīkṣitar, who was also, his original name was Muthuswami Dīkṣitar. He was called Ambi. Then Ambi Dīkṣitar taught music to a range of devotees of Dīkṣitar, literally, or disciples, and they spread the tradition in various places like Calcutta, Chennai, that is Madras, and a lot of other places. And then apart from this, see, Ettayapuram, it's also home to Mahakavi Bharatiyar Mani Mandapam. Mahakavi Subramaniya Bharati was actually born in Ettayapuram, and if you look at his book, there is a 2-page tribute from him to Subbarama Dīkṣitar. He says good music disappeared with the passing of Subbarama Dīkṣitar, literally. So I mean, it's a little bit of poetic expression there. And like I said before, the teaching tradition of Dīkṣitar's composition spread from Ettayapuram through Balaswami Dīkṣitar's descendants and their students, as well as through the lineage of Shuddha Madalam Thambiyappan, one of the most loved disciples of Dīkṣitar. He taught it to various other people through which lineage the music got passed on to brilliant musicians and legends like Veena Dhanammal, and through their lineage and through T. Vishwanathan, Brinda Mukta, and others who continue to propagate that legacy. Again, there's a lot more to be said on that. I'm just rushing through all this. I wanted to quickly go through the anatomy of Dīkṣitar composition again to show the wealth of what he has left behind. So this is a kriti on Mahalingamurti, who is enshrined in Thiruvidai Marudur. I don't know how many in this class have been to Thiruvidai Marudur, or Madhyarjanam as it's called. So this is the composition in Raga Paraj. Chintaye Mahalinga Murtim Chedrupa Spurtim Sukirtim Chintaye Maha Santatam Madhyarjuna Puravasam Bṛhat Kuchamba Sahavasam Antaranga Bhakta Janana Ati Samipa Ruju Margadarshitam Antakantakam Aditarakam Hatyadi Papaharam Puraharam Chintaye Maha. Now, as you look at this, look at the poetic yatis that prevail in this composition. First of all the end of each line, the last words actually rhyme. Suki, Murtim, Kirtim, Vasam, Darshitam, Puraharam, Mukundam, Kandam, Anandam, Skandam. So it's called Antya Akshara Prasam. Then we have the second syllable, Chinta, Santa, Anta, Antaka. Then in the Charanam, it's another rhythm scheme goes on again with the same second syllable, Paka, Shoka, Shrika, Shrika. So ka is the second syllable in the charanam. Then also you see the prevalence of alliteration. Chintaye Mahalinga Murtim, Chi Chi, Chintaye Chidrupa, Santatam Sahavasam, Antarangam Ati Samipa, Antakaantakam Adhitarakam, Hatya Adi, Hatya Adi, Hatyadi Papaharam, so on. Pakasasana Palita. So there's a lot of things you can observe here as you go through these, and important things are Ati Samipa Riju Marga Darshitam. So the combining of these two words, Pa and Ruju, gives Paraju. Paraju is the name of the raga. And then Guru Guha Mudra comes here. Shiva Swami Shaila Guru Guha Skandam. And the last lines are of significance here. First of all, it's not just poetry. It's not just an expression of his devotion to Mahalinga. It's a portrayal of Mahalingam as enshrined in the Madhyarjuna Kshetram, along with Bṛhat Kuchamba, who's Devi Parvati here. And I'll just go through the last two lines. One is Sri Kamalapura Soma Skandam, Chidambareshwara Natananandam, Sri Kalisha Bhairava Spandam, Shiva Swami Shaila Guru Guha Skandam. Why does he invoke so many other temples here? Sri Kamalapura is Thiruvarur. What does that have to do with Madhyarjuna? Chidambaram, what does it have to do with Tiruvadai Marudur? What is Sirkali? Sri Kali, that is Sirkali. And finally, Shiva Swami's Kaila, that is Swami Malai, Swami Shaila, right? So if you go to any Shiva temple, you will see Soma Skanda, Nataraja, and Bhairava, and Skanda. All these deities will be placed at certain positions according to the Agama Shastras. Now, the entire temple of Madhyarjuna is designed such that these major temples, Kamalapuram, Chidambaram, Sirgali, and Swami Malai, fall in those particular directions where, if you imagine the entire area as one temple, Mahalingeshwara would be in the center, and each of these temples would constitute the parivaras, or actually the representation of Somaskanda, Nataraja, and other deities in relation to that temple. So that fact is captured in this composition. Then I mentioned palindromes. And what is a palindrome? We say that we write down the words vi, ka, ta, ka, vi. Okay, in Sanskrit, vi, ka, ta, ka, vi. Vikata kavi. If you read it backwards, it becomes Vikata kavi again. And there is this game we used to play in Tamil, Karadi, Rail, Dilli. If you read it top to bottom, it's the same as what you read from left to right. So these are all what we call palindromes. So there's many palindromes in Dīkṣitar's compositions, particularly in the first composition itself. So I'm just going to sing the melody of the Anupallavi of Sri Nathadi. Na na. Oh, let me put this right here. Na prapancha vichitra karo nama rupa panchabhuta karo ajnana dvanta prachanda bhaskaro jnana pradayako maheshwaro. Now pay careful attention as I read the swaras backward. Nana prapancha vichitra karo nama rupa panchabhuta karo ajnana dvanta prachanda bhaskaro jnana pradayako maheshwaro. Isn't this amazing? Especially in the very first composition. And you don't even notice it till you actually pay attention to the written notation, because over time, some of these patantaras can change. But if you look at what was documented by Subbarama Dīkṣitar, you can really make out what is intended here. It gives you goosebumps when you read something like this. Then again, I already mentioned Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam. The whole Yoga Vaibhava of Tyagaraja is Again, it's a Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, Yoga Vaibhavam, Vaibhavam, Bhavam, Vam. Tyagaraj, Shiva is all of these. And yeah, so this is a yati called Gopucha, which starts out as something wide. This makes musical sense, it makes textual sense, it gives meaning, and it adds a layer of beauty, layers and layers of beauty to the whole thing. And we refer to these alankaras as ani in Tamil, and it's part of the Yap Ilakana tradition. Yap Ilakanam is the grammar of Tamil poetry, and you see a lot of these in the works of the Nayanmars, of the Devaram, written 1,000 years before Dīkṣitar. But this is something very significant. And then we have the notice for a IKS, where Dīkṣitar extends the same form of expression to colonial tunes. I'm just going to play this video. It's a very short one. It's a trailer to the film on the notice for a IKS. Yeah.
काञ्चीशमे काम्रनायकं नित्यमहं भजे कामादिषट्चोरवृत्तिमहं त्यजे काञ्चीशमे काम्रनायकं नित्यमहं भजे कामादिषट्चोरवृत्तिमहं त्यजे
Amazing. I learned a lot.
वन्दे मीनाक्षि त्वं सरसिजवक्त्रे पर्णे दुर्गे नतसुरवृन्दे शक्ते गुरुगुहपादिनि चतुर्हचरणे.
So like I said, we need another long session on the notice for IKS just to deal with them. Now, going through the rest of the slides, this is Dīkṣitar and Advaita. The Advaita philosophy deals with the nature of existence. It's a model that explains the universe. Like I said before, probably in the first session itself, the universe is just one, it's just all of existence. And there's in the, when you go through the Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi, Tat Tvamasi, and so on, you realize the unity of existence. And the unity of existence, imagining the divine or worshipping the divine in the form of that cosmic oneness, Chidrupam, Chidrupa Spurthim. We just saw it in Chintaye Mahalinga Murtim. We saw Chidrupini in Amrita Varshini. In Santatam Pahimam, we see Chidrupini. So Chidrupa is everywhere, the form of consciousness. Then Nityananda Kandam, Somas Nityananda Kandam, Satchidanandam. So then even in the work of Ponnaya, Maya Atita. So Maya Atita. Then right in the Ajnana Dvanta. So we are born with the Ajnana of the beginningless ignorance, which causes us to imagine everything as separate. These are all in-depth conversations on Advaita, and he has actually succinctly given Advaitic phrases throughout his compositions. And there is one particular composition which just describes the nature of this Advaitic reality. It's a composition which goes Sadhu Janachita Sarasi Jodayam. Sadhu Janachita Sarasi Jodayam Sakalam Brahmamayam Bodham Shiva Sankalpa Vikalpam Buddha Shuddha Nitya Nirvikalpam Sadhu Jana. See, Nityam Shuddham Buddham Muktam. These are words that are central to the Advaitic philosophy, and he has captured these in simple notice for some compositions as well. Even yesterday I mentioned Jiveshwara Bhedapaham. He brings that phrase into the notice for on Nataraja in Chidambaram. Similarly, he brings Jagadisha Guru Guha Hari Vidhi Vinutam Dehatraya Vilakshanamanandalakshanam Nityam Shuddham Buddham Muktam. So the list goes on. So it's not just the kritis, it's also in the notice for IKS that his message is not diluted. We talked about Sri Vidya tradition in his compositions. And we talked about him documenting the Raganga Ragas. So as you can see, there's a lot of matter, a lot of material in his compositions. Then his Kshetratanam, of course, was not just limited to South India. He brings in Sharada Devi enshrined in Kashmir in one of his compositions called Kalavati. Sharajyotsna Shubrakara Shashivadana Kashmir Vihara Parasharada. So, Sharada in then composition after Dīkṣitar in Rameshwaram, Ramanatham Bhajeham. And see the Setu, Ram Setu here. So all the way from Kashmir, the Setu Samudram, that's where imagination, his visualization of the sacred in the form of deities enshrined in all these sacred spaces, particularly in Tamil Nadu, but always keeping the broader perspective in focus. So he leaves us literally, I put his stamp here. So literally he's left a stamp on all these places. And there's a lot of mysticism inherent in his work, like the materialization of the Veena in the Ganges, or the yogi in Tirutani who put a piece of candy in his mouth, and after which he started singing, or the alleviation of poverty in his town of Tiruvarur when he sang the composition Hiranmayim, or when he brought down the rains. That's a separate chapter all in itself. To summarize all this, we introduced a vision of Dīkṣitar as somebody who was well-traveled, who had a pan-Indian vision, who was rooted in all these knowledge systems which constitute Purna Vidya, or the Indian knowledge systems. And he was unabashedly sharing his wisdom with anybody that chose to learn from him. He was a fearless traveler, an innovator, open to ideas and all that stuff. So normally when you say Muthuswami Dīkṣitar, we think of a person whose music is performed in kacheris as one of the trinity. But through these presentations, we have seen that he was yet another vehicle for conveying the message of Advaita through music, along the lines of the greats such as Adi Shankara and Sadashiva Brahmendra, who had also done it not to the extent of Dīkṣitar. Then he was a person that stuck to a music system, documented it, and really created a huge wealth of knowledge by his documentation through his Kshetratana, all the way from Kashmir to Rameshwaram. Then he integrated Tantra into his music, and there's more to say about all this. So basically, when we have a choice, we can look at Dīkṣitar as one who created kacheri material, or as a Renaissance personality who integrated a lot of ideas. He was just more than one, he embodied more than one art form, actually. So the way I would conclude is that he was an integrator, he was an innovator, he was an educated, he was a visionary, he was a polymath, all of the above. And what do we take away from his music in today's day and age? It is an imagined picture of the past coexisting with the present. The only thing I can note from here is the one-way traffic on the street. This is the AI-generated picture. The metro going, the temple in the street here, a lot of selfies and so on and so forth. So this is a very complex time that we're living in. So what is the message we can take from Dīkṣitar? One is learn from the discipline, the way he stuck to his tradition in terms of ragas and so on, the raga system of Venkatamaki, and the way he created a compositional model and stuck to it, and how he traveled from place to place. His idea was clear. He wanted to travel, he wanted to create music, he wanted to create packaged knowledge and deliver it, and his knowledge was rooted in IKS. So let's emulate that discipline, this awareness of IKS, Indian knowledge systems, Let's learn from the syncretism, that the way he integrated things into his compositions. Let's learn from his innovation and openness. Just imagine how open-minded somebody must have been more than 200 years ago to create um, his vision in colonial tunes that came with the British. Look at his broad vision where he integrated so many ideas, the Shanmata tradition, various worship traditions all over India, legends and Puranas, and just the level of awareness. And then finally, the Sthita Prajna. So we live in a changing world, but just imagine yourself for a second. What would the world have been like in the 1700s and the 1800s when Dīkṣitar lived? Was it a stable paradigm? No, there was a lot of changes happening. The British were coming, laws were being changed, so many things were disrupted on a regular basis. The only constant all the time is change. And the only thing that can enable us to live through change and uncertainty is that state of steadiness, the realization of our space, our existence in the grand scheme of existence, that we are beyond our bodies, that we are beyond our sukshma sharira itself, that we are beyond our mind, and we are beyond our mind and bodies, and it is that state of consciousness, and it is that rootedness that will, along with all these, with the openness and the discipline, which will really enable us to attain our potential in a more effective manner, like Dīkṣitar did. So that's all I had to share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm open to questions.
What a beautiful conclusion, I must say. Really enjoyed today's session also. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. So to everyone here, yes, questions. Has Dīkṣitar composed Kriti in Karaharappriya?
No, actually not. In the Dīkṣitar scheme, the 22nd Raganga is called Shri. Sa re ma pa ni sa, sa ni pa da ni pa ma re ga re sa. That's considered to be the Raganga, which is the parent of all the Upanga and the Bhashanga ragas in that scheme. So we don't have a scale of Karaharappriya in the Dīkṣitar system at all. So there's no compositions in Karaharappriya. And again, Chaturdasha Bhuvana Rupa Raga Raga Malika Bharana Tarananta Danipama Riga Garisa. So the Danipa usually comes only once in a composition. That's a convention that Dīkṣitar follows. Yeah. Yes, I'm looking at some. Yeah, Maya Tita Swarupani is not by Ambi Dīkṣitar, it's by Ponneya Pillai. Correct. Yeah, it is by Ponneya Pillai of the Tanjavur quartet in Telugu. Yes, but it follows the Dīkṣitar model. And in Sri Guruna Paritosmi, yeah, Advaita Siddhanta comes over and over again in the Guru Guha Vibhakti Kritis, as well as in a lot of other Kritis.
Can you explain the difference between
I'm
handling
going
Raga Gurjal? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to defer that to the next lecture demonstration. So
Okay.
sorry, Haripriya, we'll deal with that in the next next time I come here. The
All right.
Naga Gandhari Raganute, it's okay. Sarasija Nabha Sodari is one of Dīkṣitar's compositions, which is not documented in the SSP. Same is the case with Naga Gandhari Raganute. Then Shankaracharyam is by Subbarama Dīkṣitar. Yes. And series on the Navagraha Kritis too, very much. Yeah, we can do that. Mahasuram on Ketu,
Really?
yes. Yeah, Swaminatha Paripalaya Shumam. See, Swaminatha Paripalaya Shumam was kind of speeded up and the Edipu was changed. The way it's notated, it's Swaminatha Paripalaya Shumam. Over the years, it has changed to Swaminatha Paripa. So that is not characteristic of Dīkṣitar actually, because the Takita Talli, Takita Swaminatha, that's a different way of singing it, which is kind of attained popularity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering because it sounded so different from the versions that we heard.
Yeah, this is the way it is notated, and it's when you sing it in this tempo, you actually realize the meaning of every word in there. Swaprakasha, swaprakasha, vallisha, Guru Guha Devasenesha Swaminatha. Then Kamitartha Vitarana Nipuna Charana Kavya Nataka Lankara Bharana Bhumi Jalatmi. That's how it goes.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any particular importance of Ettayapuram for Dīkṣitar apart from his brother's event, that he chose to spend his last days there?
No, that was the only family he had, right? It's brothers.
Got it. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And thank you, Narayan sir. Thank you. Dīkṣitar Samadhi, it's not really a Samadhi, it's just a memorial site because he was cremated, right? So it's not his body that's enshrined, it's not his material remains. So that site has been renovated, and there's Dīkṣitar Akhandams that happen there. Ettayapuram is very far away. Like, if you compare Dīkṣitar and Tyagaraja, which we don't really need to, the only reason we compare is that they were born in the same town, and then they are regarded as the trinity of Carnatic music. But then for Tyagaraja, it's like Tiruvayyar is closer to Chennai than Ettayapuram. And it's in the heart of the Tanjavur district, which itself is a center of music. So it's easy for people to congregate, and it's a phenomenal celebration which has been going on for like 100 years or so. Usage of Sri in place of Kharaharapriya. Nata is used in place of Chalanata Mela. Actually, Chalanata is Mela number 36. In the Dīkṣitar scheme also it's called Chalanata, but the Raga Mudra is Nata. Dīkṣitar favors some Mela Kartas over others. Any favorites that he had? Yeah, I think generally, if you do an actual distribution, you would see a lot of compositions in Shankarabharanam, Sri, which is 22, some in Nattabhairavi, and the lot in number 15, which is Malava Gowda. Lot of derivatives of Malava Gowda have been handled by Dīkṣitar. There's quite a few of them. And they are there only in the Dīkṣitar school, only in the Venkatamaki school. You don't see them in other schools. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so let's share a link to the book. Give me just a second.
Excellent. So, Kanniks, as I mentioned, we'll definitely try to have one lecture demonstration in person in Chennai, and we'll let everyone know when that will be, when we set it up. We're
Sure.
trying to make that happen. Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe
Yeah,
it would be really nice to have it on the Navagraha Kritis or the Navavarana Kritis, either.
Yeah, the thing is, this is, like I said before, this is endless site.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Navagraha Kritis, there's so much to learn from those. And then the Navavarana, there is no end to those. And again,
True,
the overall philosophy of Dīkṣitar and non-duality, and Dīkṣitar and the 6 streams of worship, Shanmata, the Notiswara Sahityas of Dīkṣitar, even that is an in-depth topic we don't realize. People take it for granted. Oh, Western tunes, somebody wrote something on top of that. What is there? But actually, there's so much of depth behind those as well.
True.
And then the lessons we can take away, like a summarized in the end. So the book has all of these. There's a whole section in the end as to what we can take away from Dīkṣitar, and how it all depends on how you look at him. If you look at him if you look at his compositions as Kacheri material, yes, they are Kacheri material. But I think they're beyond Kacheri material. They are valuable lessons for us to just, like, what we say, Shravana Manana Nidhi Yasana. So you could listen to a composition, you could think about it, you could meditate upon it, you can just keep living with it over and over again, and suddenly some truths will dawn on you. There's something Tamil, we use the phrase "tevittade inbam," something that you don't get sick of it at all. And the other is you keep looking at it, you learn something every time. So that is the class under which Dīkṣitar compositions fall. And I think we should rightfully.
Kanishji, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that is a class in which we should hold Dīkṣitar and his compositions more as a national figure than as one of the composers of the South. What is my favorite Kriti of Muthuswami Dīkṣitar? Sir, it's very difficult to answer this question. Ranganayakam is one of them. Chetashri is one of them. And then Arunachalanatham, Jambupate, of course, Chaturdasha Ragamalika, and Swaminatha Paripalaya Sumam, just for the simplicity and for the magic that's there in that composition. Even Vatapi Ganapatim becomes magical when you sing it in Vilambakalam, instead of rushing through the Sangatis and going to ta-ta, 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 ta-ta. So, Karam Ujapachali, instead of rushing to that, if you just live through every line, the magic you get in Vatapi Ganapatim is a lot more. So, sir, I don't have one single answer to that question. It's a lot, all of these. I wanted to play something. I wanted to play one more thing in the spirit of innovation.
Sure.
We had done a program called Ragas in Symphony in Europe, and then there's a piece of the Amrita Varshini Kriti that I used to denote rain. It's choreographed in the modern dance form. Let me just share it with you. It's a short clip.
Also, I was going to say, can you spend just 30 seconds kind of going over everything that you cover in your book? Maybe give us a structure of the book or something.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a modern dance. Okay, so just watch this, and it's sung by a choir. So that was done many, many years ago. So that was Amrita Varshini in a choral rendition along with the symphony. Okay, just to summarize the book. The book is titled Anubhuti. It starts with a prologue, which is my personal experience of Dīkṣitar, how I learned about Dīkṣitar right from my childhood, how I listened to the Notice for a Sahitya played in my own house by my grandmother and others, my great-grandfather and others, and then how my teacher opened the doors of Dīkṣitar to our family, literally, and then the discovery of Dīkṣitar as I visited temples as like a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, and then getting into the background of Carnatic music and how Dīkṣitar's compositions are placed there. Then it gets into the life history of Dīkṣitar with reference to his travels around the country and also to a reference of all the compositions that were written during his travels. And then we get into the influences, the repertoire itself. How many compositions are there? How do they break down, and what are the significant features in those? The anatomy of kritis, and then the different aspects of influence on Dīkṣitar's compositions, and then also into the 6 streams of worship, the Digvijaya of Dīkṣitar, the mysticism in Dīkṣitar's life, a long chapter on the notice for Sahityas itself, and then comes book. The whole book is organized into 3 parts: book 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is about the composer himself, 2 is about the music, and number 3 is about what the lessons that can be learned. So that's how the book is organized, and it also features comprehensive lists of the relevant matter that's in there. So if you're interested in Dīkṣitar, I hope a lot of people are. So I'm hoping that you will find this as a valuable resource in the 250th year of Dīkṣitar.
Definitely. I think we can drop your email address in the chat.
Sure.
We can do that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So any more questions? I think we can defer to email, and we'll wrap up here. And as always, thank you so much for the 3 lectures. They were all equally brilliant. Really looking forward to your book. I'll be reading it, picking it up for sure, and reviewing it also. So
Awesome.
yeah. So, and also looking forward to meeting you in person, hopefully in Chennai soon.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
And we'll be, yeah. No, go ahead.
Somebody mentioned Sandhya Devim Savitrim. So it has a beautiful passage. Saptasvara matrika rupini samsara tukka shamani taninim tatpada lakshyartha rupini tamayachara Shinim Sandhya Devim Savitri. It's a beautiful composition. It's not listed, it's not notated in the SSP, but nevertheless, it's a very beautiful composition. I've taught it to many people also. Thank you for bringing it up, Dr. Mrinalini Menon. Yes.
Lovely. All right. Yeah.
Sure.
So any more, do you have something to say, Dr. Murali? Wondering.
I think it has been a divine experience. That's all I can say. And
thank you.
I mean, such an extensive series on Dīkṣitar, having been trained under the Dīkṣitar school and with my own guru, Sri R.K. Padmanabha from Bangalore. I am familiar with a number of kritis of Dīkṣitar, but having this kind of an interface, I consider it a blessing from the divine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for those that have watched it, once the recordings go on live on YouTube, please do share it with your friends, and then let's hope we can spread more awareness through these talks. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your comments also. So we just wrap up with the shloka. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.